An often under-discussed factor in the upcoming 2024 Republican presidential primaries is the fact that Ron DeSantis, or Ron DeSanctimonious, or Little D is also a name, I guess, that Trump is considering for him. He was in the Navy, of course. He was also stationed at Guantanamo Bay. Now, we don't talk much about Guantanamo Bay these days. You know, it's not in the media highlight cycle. It's not doing the same stuff that it was doing 20 years ago. Certainly, it's still doing plenty of bad stuff, but it's not quite at its apex of relevance. But Ron DeSantis was there when it was at its apex of relevance. And recently, by which I mean, I think just the other day, a podcast discussion between Mike Preisner, an Iraq War veteran, and Mansour Adaifi, a former detainee at Guantanamo Bay, talked about DeSantis a little bit of inside info on the political situation. Wasn't this a story like 2 months ago? Yes. But a lot of the information we have on DeSantis at Guantanamo Bay is classified. It is military, after all. So we don't have much in the way of, like, specifics. This gets specific. Mansour Adaifi, that's the former detainee at Gitmo. As you know, Guantanamo was created out of the legal zone, out of the legal system. Torture was the mechanism of Guantanamo. Torture, abuse, and experimenting on prisoners. We went on a massive hunger strike in 2005, and there was force feeding. It was torture. I saw a handsome person come in, and he said, "I'm here to ensure that you are treated humanely." Mike says, "It was Ron DeSantis?" And Adaifi says, "Yes. And if you have any problems, if you have any concerns, just talk to me," he said. We were drowning in that place. So I was like, oh, this is cool. This person will raise the concerns. But it was a piece of the game. What they were doing was looking for what hurts us more so they could use it against us. In 2006, when DeSantis was there, it was one of the worst times in Guantanamo. The administration, the guards, all of them were the worst. They cracked down on us so hard. When they came to break our hunger strike, a team came to us. The head of the team, he was a general. He said, "I have a job. I was sent here to break your hunger strike. I don't care why you are here. I don't care who you are. My job is to make you eat. Today we are talking. Tomorrow there will be no talking." The second day, they brought piles of Ensure, and they started force-feeding us over and over again. Mike says, for those who don't know, Ensure is a thick, milky nutritional shake mainly marketed on daytime television to elderly people. It is very hard to drink. Adaifi says, yes, and Ron DeSantis was there watching us. We were crying, screaming. We were tied to the feeding chair, and he was watching. He was laughing. Our stomachs could not hold this amount of Ensure. They poured one can after another. So when he approached me, I said, "This is the way we are treated." He said, "You should eat." I threw up on his face, literally on his face. Preisner says, "Ron DeSantis?" And Adaifi says, "In his face, yeah." Preisner says, "It was well deserved. A JAG lawyer at the time, he would have been well aware this was a violation of international law. There's no question it was torture." Adaifi continues, "They used to restrain us in that feeding chair. They tied our head, our shoulders, our wrists, our thighs, and our legs. They put some kind of laxative in the feeding liquid. We were shitting ourselves all the time. Then we were moved to solitary confinement, really cold cells. It was like 5 times a day. It wasn't feeding, it was just torture. 5 times a day. You couldn't possibly handle it. They just kept pouring the Ensure. In 1 week, they broke all the hunger strikers. And he was there. All of them were watching. They also used to beat us. And if we screamed or were bleeding out of our nose and mouth, they were like, eat. The only word they told you was eat. We were beaten all day long. Whatever you were doing, they just beat you. Pepper spray, beating, sleep deprivation. That continued for 3 months. And he was there. He was one of the people that supervised the torture, the abuses, the beatings. All the time at Guantanamo. So Preisner says, so Ron DeSantis was actually supervising torture, beatings? He was supervising these force feedings? Adaifi says, I'm telling Americans this guy is a torturer. He is a criminal. He was laughing. And he was there to ensure we were treated humanely. Preisner said he was laughing? Adaifi says, yes, they were looking at us laughing because we were shitting ourselves. I was screaming and yelling. When your stomach is full of Ensure, you can't breathe, and you are throwing up at the same time. I was screaming. I looked at him and he was actually smiling, like somebody who was enjoying it. One of the things that hurt us was, when someone comes and tells you, I am here to help you, I'm here to ensure that you are treated humanely, And when he turns against us, not turned against us, showed his true face, it was a shock to all of us. He had his notebook. He would ask the prisoners, "Do you have any problems? How can I help you? How have the guards treated you?" I was like, "Wow, thanks." But everything we told him was turned against us. So Preisner says, so basically he was gathering intelligence to tell the interrogators what it was that was impacting you most so they could do it more. Adaifi says, I remember when we were talking about the noise in the night. We were talking about the vacuums, the generators, the fans, and everything, and they brought in more stuff. Preisner says, so you told Desantis this, and then they increased the noise. Adaifi says, they increased the noise. And the food, for example. We told him we don't eat meat. What the guards did after that is they mixed all the food with meat. Preisner says, so that's another thing you told Desantis? Adaifi says it's not just that. Medicine, clothing, treatment, sleeping, the desecration of the Quran, everything. We talked to him when they were force-feeding us. He was smiling, looking at us as trash. Preisner says, you told me there was a resistance tactic there of splashing administrators, splashing them with your own feces, but you didn't use this tactic often? Adaifi says, only the worst of the worst got splashed. Preisner, Desantis? Adaifi, yes. There's very little that I can add to this. Kind of defies annotation. Yeah, so there's a reason why a lot of the official records of Desantis' participation at Gitmo, and a lot of people's, classified. Now, in terms of the moral character of these people and the national station of what we were doing there at Gitmo, it's essentially the same thing that what do they call it? The Japanese unit in Manchuria was doing. It's the same as what the Nazi doctors were doing during the Holocaust. There's always in the worst excesses of an administration driven by xenophobia or sort of ethnic bias. It's like a disease. It's a cancer, and invariably, as this cancer spreads, there will be a portion of the military and political bureaucracy that is motivated purely out of sadism. I think you could fairly analogize this to like demonic or antichrist-like behavior. I think that's a fair analogization because we're talking about like there's no rational purpose to it. There's not even some kind of like rote utilitarian like, well, the ends justify the means, or who cares? It's the only purpose there is sadism. Like I guess a demon would, there's no sense to it. There's no point. This guy could be one of the most powerful people in the world in just a couple of years if he wins, I mean, he would be the president of the United States of America, commander-in-chief of the world's most powerful military. He's trying to turn Florida into a little petty tyrant state right now, and he will do the exact same thing if he's put in charge. This is why I've said, Trump and DeSantis are different. They're both fascists. I don't mean to downplay Trump, but DeSantis is competent in ways that Trump is not. And what's more, I don't actually think that Trump is a sadist. I think his only emotional drive is to get applause. Certainly the people that he's getting applause from are fascists, so he will do and say many terrible things to get that applause, but it is ultimately for that. I don't think he's doing it because he privately enjoys people suffering. I don't think he thinks about them. You know what I mean? I genuinely don't think that Trump cares about the people who get bowled over in his wake. I think it's immaterial to him. The difference there being with DeSantis is that I think he probably like gets off to it, That sounds like a joke. I honestly don't know if it is. This is a deep level of psychological degeneracy that I think you could fairly say almost anything negative about DeSantis, and it would probably just be true. I think you would struggle to make an accusation that would not land against him, as long as that accusation was a negative one. He's a demon, essentially, and this is one of the reasons why I am, of course, a MAGA communist. Because, look, all I'm saying is that in the primary war between DeSantis and Trump, I know who I'm siding with, unequivocally, 100%. Look at what Donald Trump managed to do in 4 years of office. Not much. Look at what DeSantis has done in the past 2 years as governor of Florida. A lot. I know who I'm rooting for in the primary. The only other thing that I have to say here is that I think it's really important to understand that especially DeSantis, but a large portion of the Republican electorate of politicians, they are like this. Politicians and powerful people generally are often like sociopaths, but I don't think that this is regular sociopathic behavior. Sociopathy, if you actually think about it, and by the way, the term now is anti-personal or anti-personal. Wait, what is it? Antisocial personality disorder. That's right. Antisocial personality disorder can take a lot of forms. It's not. It's a very broad descriptor, and whatever that broad categorization encompasses, this is the farthest end of it. This is not like regular, this is not like, well, politicians are like this. This describes a very particular kind of rot. And a lot of the people around DeSantis, people who know him, his family, his so-called friends, the people next to him, they know that he's like this. A great many people are fully aware of how he is, and they like that because they are also like that. Yeah, sorry guys, like I said, I'm not entirely sure how to keep the peppy tone up when we're talking about stuff like this. Damn man, the world is miserable, Jesus. Well, keep in mind, the world has been like this for a long time, basically forever. You think the old monarchs of Europe were all like competent leaders? A lot of these people would torture people for fun. They were psychopaths and monsters. There's always been a lot of good and there's always been a lot of bad. And I think the issue is that we've been operating under a kind of delusion for a little while now, since liberalism, the idea that like effective and regimented institutions and bureaucracies are capable of ironing out those issues, Like you can bureaucracy stuff up all you want, but there are fundamental underlying reasons for this kind of behavior. In the case of Ron DeSantis, this is a very, very clear Marxist case for a proletarian society, because the things that made Ron DeSantis what he is, the monster that he is, are fundamentally a product of class distinction and military indoctrination. At every point in Ron DeSantis' life, he has been put in a position above others, and he has been told nonstop, affirmed at every opportunity, you are better than these people. They are a different kind of person to you and others. This justifies your behavior. And it is categorical distinctions that allow that, We have to abolish them entirely. There's plenty of room for individuality and uniqueness within a given social class, but there cannot be distinctions between the classes. Because if they are, they don't actually facilitate individuality. They do the opposite. They stifle it.